What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is Friday Night Live. It's been a while since I've done an actual Friday Night Live show, and I'm very happy to be here tonight with this show because we got a very important topic of discussion. This is something we're going to try to cover many realms of concern in the comic book hobby right now, between your everyday collectors to even us that sit here on YouTube and talk about comics, every day of the week. So we will be talking about conflict of interest and what that looks like in the comic book hobby right now in this current state of things. And we have two awesome special guests that we're going to bring in just a couple of minutes here. Saying what's up to everyone that's hanging out already. We'll give a couple minutes to let some folks get in. Simon, Raising L, what's going on? Maz, Peter's here. What's going on, Peter? Preston, White Shadow, what's going on, man? Sinfully Good, excuse me. Alex, what's up, Alex? Spider Dude. We got BBB Hardcore. Tony T's hanging out. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it. So, a couple quick little updates for you guys before we get on with the show and bring in the guests. Today is Friday. We got 2 more days until our comic book canon show coming on Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We are launching a new segment called Props or Flops. It's an investing segment. We've done a little something with Props or Flops before, but this is a fresh new take on it. I recommend you guys go check out my Instagram if you're not following me there at journals_comics. I recently did a post yesterday where I talk about how to get your post entered into props or flops. So it will be community, involvement. I'll pick 3 posts of books that maybe you just bought or maybe books that you are looking to invest in. Post it on Instagram. Tell me about why you're interested in it or why you just bought it, and ask me, Chris, is this a props or a flops? And I'm going to pick 3 books, 3 entries every week to showcase. We'll break down the market, and I'll give you guys my honest opinion on those. So, hope to see you guys on the Canon Show this Sunday. That link is below as well. It is September, so happy new month to everyone. We have a Patreon giveaway rolling out most likely by the end of the next week. We also have a YouTube channel member giveaway that's rolling out most likely by the end of next week, so look out for that. We do have August Q&A, patron-only Q&A, our live show like we do every month. This one is going to be public again. I did a poll to all my Patreon members, and the majority of them liked it when we do it public, but there were a lot of you that said, you want to keep it more intimate. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to switch them up. So every other month we'll do a public stream. We'll allow community members to get involved, hear your guys' questions, and hear what I have to say to answer them. And then on the flip month, we'll do a strictly patron-only private live stream chat with just all the Patreon members. So I think that's something that we can kind of appease everyone there. So looking forward to all of that. Killheart, what's going on? Como's hanging out. What's going on, Como? Let's see. Brendan, what's up, Brendan? Glorious feeling when you picked up a grail. Nice. Old man Hal, what's going on? All right, folks, let's do this. Let's not waste any time. We got a lot to talk about, and you guys know me. I don't like to sit here for hours and hours with you guys. I want to talk about important things. I want to get to the point. I want to flesh this out. We got some awesome special guests that we're going to bring. If you guys aren't following them or subscribe to their YouTubes, their links are below. So do that for Bronze Age Nerd and Swaggle House. What is going on, guys?
What's up? Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Swag, man, 2 times in 1 week.
Yeah, I know. This is like a record. Yeah. Literally a record. So, this is great.
Yeah, I'm honored for you coming back because, you really sat with us just a couple days ago, and we had a great stream with Nelson, owner of Big Time Collectibles. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And Bronze, man, I mean, I feel like I've had you on maybe a couple times over the last couple months.
Yeah. I think I'm starting to get my punch card going now.
Awesome. And I think this is the first time we've had Bronze Age and Swaggle in the same room at the same time together. So this is going to be a great show. Two people that I value what you guys do. I value both of you as human beings and what you guys bring to this community and this hobby. And of course, what you guys are going to bring to this conversation tonight. So again, folks, if you're not following or subscribed to Bronze Age or Swaggle, those links are below, close to the top in the description right down there. So make sure you guys do that. All right. So we've had so much stuff happen over the last few weeks. Of course, again, I keep saying this is like a lot of us are beating the dead horse, but I really think this is a good thing. You know, starting with the C2E2 acetate drama, everyone with a YouTube channel, and I've been seeing it. Like there are people that haven't had much success, not many views, not many subscribers, and they've hopped on all this, and it's shot them up. And kudos. I'm not mad about that, because here's the thing, folks. While I hope that the conversations are productive, right? And while it kind of sucks to just hear the same people repeat the same thing all the time, I think there's a lot of stuff that's on the flip side of that happening. I think there are a lot of productive conversations happening. I think there are a lot of people with valid concerns. So ever since that happened, I was reaching out to folks, even reached out to Como, who's here in the chat. We'll have Como on again soon for sure. Reached out to you two. I was like, oh, let's do something about the C2E2. But then, you know, with just the way that transpired, we're like, okay, you know, everyone's talking about it. But then something else happened. What was it? Something with CGC or CBCS. And then I'm reaching back out to you guys. Okay, well, hey, let's talk about CBCS or CGC or something like that. And then finally I was like, okay, no, let's set that aside. How do we do a show? Because for me, it was bringing some people on and really having a roundtable discussion and talking about things in a way that kind of pushes the dialogue further, right? How do we do that? So Mickey, you really inspired this idea when we were chatting about this whole broader issue of conflict of interest. You know, and I think when you look at everything that's transpired in the last few weeks, and you talked about optics a lot, Swaggle, and we talk about the fact that a lot of stuff is coming to light. And I personally am an optimist here, folks. I think this is good, because now we can start having the conversations and hopefully start actually putting our words to action, you know, not just talking the talk. We want to walk the walk. How do we start the change instead of saying, oh, CGC sucks, but yet we're still sending them a bunch of books? Oh, you know, we're not going to support retailers that do shady business, but yet we're going to go line up and spend $300 on that next exclusive. Oh, you know, we have this issue with whatnot or this issue with this, whatever, but then we just go and sell and support. And again, I'm not trying to be anti this or that, but I'm just saying, let's talk about the issues at hand. Let's flesh it out, and let's try to come to some understanding of how we can continue to push the narrative forward and push for positive change. So with that being said, we're going to get into this, guys. All right. Now, conflict of interest is obviously probably the main example of conflict of interest can happen, in the stock market. You got this thing called insider trading. You know, you can't make money off of things that you are privy to because you work in a field. Conflict of interest often happens in politics, in big businesses that end up getting in cahoots with politics. And sometimes, guys, conflict of interest is the nature of the beast. We'll talk about this. I'll give this as an example briefly. Special interests. So this isn't about Republican or Democrat or anything like this, but it's a fact of a matter that, big business funds campaigns and funds policymaking. And it's often a conflict of interest. So when you have, a certain president or administration that's has somebody in that administration that has ties to arms defense and arms manufacturing, and you appoint one of those individuals is the head of defense, that is a conflict of interest. And then you have another president who appoints the head or the ex-head of Monsanto as the head of the FDA. Because what do these bureaucracies do? Well, they regulate businesses. So if you have the head or somebody that has ties to Monsanto is they basically control and own all the food that you purchase at the grocery store, down to the seed, down to the dirt that the seed is planted in. So when you have FDA pushing regulations that benefit a corporation, that is a conflict of interest. All right. Going into the comic book side, if I'm sitting here telling you, maybe, hey, look, I bought a collection, and I have about 40 Dazzler number ones. It's a nice little a valuable semi-key book. But I go on my channel and I say, guys, this book, like I have rumor, I'm confident in this rumor. I have a source. Dazzler's going to show up in the MCU. This book is hot. It's flaming hot. Get it. Buy this book now. And then the next day I go on Whatnot and I'm selling 40 copies of the book. I don't know. You might call that a conflict of interest, right, guys? I mean, maybe. So that's just some examples, folks. With that being said, we're going to get into the first topic of discussion here, guys. And
got to go on eBay and get a Dazzler one right now.
right.
Don't mind me, guys. Don't mind me.
And
I
thank
got them
you
all
both
first.
for
Okay, damn it.
Yeah, thank you for waiting patiently while I gave my little spiel there about some kind of examples of conflict of interest. So I want to talk about, Mickey, I want you to start this one off here, because I know you talked about this a little bit in a recent video that you did. But we're going to start off, again, guys, audience. There are many layers of conflict of interest here that I think a lot of people are concerned about or not. I'm going to do my best to be a journalist here. Like, I'm here today trying to understand and get answers, right? I don't want to be too hard in my own biases or opinions one way or the other. I'm going to do my best to be kind of a neutral, maybe a devil's advocate. I want facts, I want truth, and I want to figure these things out. I want to get to the bottom of these things. We're going to talk about Whatnot, guys, okay? I sell on Whatnot. I think there's a lot of positives about Whatnot, but I understand a lot of people's concerns when it comes to conflict of interest, okay? They are basically a marketplace, right? Just like eBay or Facebook Marketplace. They are a virtual marketplace. So they're kind of like the flea market, right? You go to a flea market as a vendor and you pay a vendor's fee. And, even to go into most flea markets, it costs money. They have to rent the property and all this stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, the whoever runs the flea market has to make money in order to, because they probably either rent the land or own the land, and there's fees involved, because we go back to like government regulations and whatever they need to do in order to actually have a flea market. There's probably ordinances and codes that they have to follow, and OSHA and all this stuff. So, and then you get vendors that pay the fee, and then the consumers go to the flea market, and okay, then they have all these choices. They can go to this vendor, that vendor. Who do I want to spend my money with? So, of course, a place like Whatnot is really a virtual flea market, so to say. I think one of the biggest issues that has come up with Whatnot is obviously they sponsor some of their sellers. They really push their sellers. They throw their logos, on promotional materials. They push sellers, and they get advertising and marketing. They are now a publishing company as well. They have Whatnot Publishing. They've teamed up with sellers and with other entities to do exclusive variants. So, Mickey, I want you to jump in here. Now, I do have some examples that I want to bring up, but I want to give you both kind of a chance to just talk about the things I just prefaced here a little bit and where you guys are kind of sitting like that. What are you guys seeing and maybe what concerns you guys right now? Swaggle.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack. I think there's a lot of things that can be said. What I will say is if we're going to open up the conversation specifically with Whatnot, and then also kind of address the topic of, the stream tonight, which is like conflict of interest. I don't know if there's anything I can truly point to at this moment with them as a business of what is the conflict of interest specifically, because I think the conflict of interest really, for me, it kind of leans more into like the CGC side of things. I'm trying to think about with Whatnot, if there is any specific conflicts of interest. You mentioned the Whatnot publishing side, and I'm like, maybe that's okay, because if I go into Trader Joe's or Safeway or whatever, they might have their own brand of milk that I can buy or their own brand of chips. So that's fine. It seems like that's okay. But it does kind of get into this maybe gray area. Maybe it's not a conflict of interest specifically, but it does get into this gray area of Whatnot sort of in their algorithm pushing certain sellers and kind of having it be kind of this, here I'm going to use the dirty word, the influencer based sort of like social media platform that kind of has certain sellers that are pushed towards me. Cause I follow you guys on Whatnot. And when I go into Whatnot, I mean, you're not the first people that come up. It's like other people that are going, so it's an interesting thing. And that's even with like YouTube algorithms or Twitch, if you guys know Twitch and things like that. So that's like a whole other, tech problem. But there is sort of maybe weird conflicts of interest with individual people who sell on Whatnot, which, I think we might get into those conversations. And that was what you were talking about with like the Dazzler thing. Like if you're making your spec video journo that week and you're talking about Dazzlers, the next big character, and then you do your Whatnot sale and you're selling a bunch of Dazzler #1s. Well, yeah, all of a sudden this kind of becomes, maybe it's a conflict of interest. Maybe it's not a conflict of interest. It's just sort of like a kind of a unscrupulous way of doing your YouTube, I suppose.
Like
maybe
a
that
self-promotion.
Yeah, kind of just a little bit shady. It's a little bit dirty and stuff. So
right.
I don't know. Those are my sort of general thoughts. I don't know. I'm sure we can kind of dive more in, but maybe I can hand it off to you guys or Bronze and see what you say.
I do like what you said about the grocery store. We're gonna circle back to that in a minute. So Bronze, just again, kind of what are your, looking at Whatnot and the certain elements that we've addressed so far. Maybe you even have other elements that what are your kind of general thoughts and maybe some concerns you have right now?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of counter Whatnot arguments in the community right now. And I think there's a lot of resentment towards Whatnot. So I think that makes them an easy target to have just kind of that big W on their back that people kind of look at. And that includes a lot of the high profile sellers on Whatnot as well. But just because something is not necessarily popular for everybody, because something can be divisive, doesn't necessarily make it something that crosses over into a particularly unethical or conflict of interest type of area to me. And I'm one of those people that's not really in the pitchfork bandwagon for Whatnot for the most part. Now, there are a couple things, that do come up, though, where I think you could kind of say there might be some conflicts of interest, and that, trying to keep it in the banner of what we're talking about tonight. So Whatnot publishing. If you're a Whatnot publishing seller, let's say you get access to sell the books on your stream, or Whatnot themselves is able to sell the books on their own stream, which I believe is most of what they do. And you're putting yourself at the top of the algorithm and pushing out all the other sellers. You could argue there's a bit of a conflict there because you're putting up your own goods for sale on that platform, and you're hoping that there's at least a somewhat fair shot that you're going to get a share of that audience. Over the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen Whatnot's audience really shrink to the point where it maybe not even shrink, but it seems to allocate towards all the bigger streamers,
right?
And sort of leave this long, narrow delta of sellers that have maybe 4 or 5 people in their stream, 10 people in their stream, and then a few that have like 80 to 100 at any given time. The other thing, like we mentioned, like Mickey mentioned with the algorithm, you're pushing some of those sellers to the top. What is the criteria for those sellers getting pushed to the top? Why are they being pushed to the top? Are they being pushed to the top because they have a contract with Whatnot? Is that being disclosed by Whatnot? So maybe there's a conflict of interest there, maybe there's not, but part of it depends on the messaging and the transparency. At one point, Whatnot was telling us that they were in it for all the sellers. They wanted everybody on board, that they wanted to make sure, we had good sellers on that platform and that we want to support those sellers. A lot of sellers feel like they're kind of left out in the cold. And if they're being left out in the cold for the expense of these kind of proven streamers on the platform, that does seem like it could potentially be a conflict of interest to me.
Wow. Okay. Great points. You guys got my brain working here. So, and I like Bronze. What you said brings me back to what Swaggle said about the grocery store aspect. I think I might even have an example here. Do I have an example of a grocery store? Let's see. Well, first off, to Swag's point, I like that because you're playing to the side. Like, let's not be sour, and just pick up pitchforks. And let's say, you walk into the grocery store, they have their own brands and they're making money off of that as well, while other brands are paying for shelf space. So, when you look at it like that, that's not really a problem. I don't, there's no law against it. Where would you draw the ethical line there? So, okay.
Yeah.
But, and I do want to note that even eBay has gotten into doing partnering with exclusive variants and stuff. So, but here's the thing, what Bronze brought in. Okay, so it's okay to share shelf space with your own brand, with all the brands that you're housing, right? But can you imagine going into the grocery store and instead of having algorithms, say you have big security guard type folks, right? And they got say, you're going into a Safeway. That's what I have over here in Cali. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Safeway. Say you have a Safeway or a Whole Foods or whatever it is, or Trader Joe's, and you got these guys, they're like security guys, and they're shackled down in Safeway gear or Whole Foods gear, and you're like, you want to go find pasta sauce, and you got an aisle back there with 20 different pasta sauces, and they're all there, and you have options, but these big security guys come up and they're like, no, you can't go over there. Trader Joe's pasta sauce right here, or Safeway's pasta sauce. Nope, you're not going in the pasta sauce aisle, right? Or you can even say that maybe they take the whole row and put Trader Joe's or Safeway pasta there, and the only, or they're just leaving the other brands in back stock, and you got to go ask. You got to say, hey, but do you have Bertelli's? Oh, well, let me go check. And then you got to go walk behind, and they come out with a couple cans or something. And I don't know if I'm comparing apples to apples here, but I think that's where it comes into what you both have touched on about where there could be a conflict of interest or lack of transparency in the fact that, okay, is everyone getting an equal shot? Now, I do have some examples that I wrote down here. And again, I don't know if these are feasible examples, but I want your guys' opinion on this. So one example I have, can you imagine going into the MGM Grand? The MGM Grand is having a huge boxing fight, right? But MGM is sponsoring one of the boxers that are set to fight. Would the refs call the fight honestly, knowing that their employee was sponsoring one of the fighters? So I don't know if that's even as relevant now that Swaghouse, you brought up the grocery store analogy. But what do you think? What do you think of the grocery store examples that I set?
Well, I
piggybacking that.
I think that there is examples of that. I mean, you can walk into a grocery store and take your pasta analogy. I mean, sometimes they have the centerfold spreads, right? Where they'll have whatever brand is front and center immediately when you walk into the store. And I think there's levels here. It's at the grocery store, honestly, it's not that big a deal, right? That they have a whatever. And for the most part, I rarely find that it's the store itself that is pushing their own brand in those situations. When we're talking about like virtual worlds and whatnot and stuff like that, it definitely, it feels a lot more egregious. And to your point, it can be a lot more abrasive in terms of like the feeling that you get, where it's like, okay, Bronze Age nerd, this is the one that you got to go to this one. Like, that's the only one I can navigate to. I can't even find Journo's one. Like, it's buried deep in the view all section, you know? So I think that, you know, the analogy holds. So I think that there's probably some level to where there's some elements that probably Whatnot has a little bit of a conflict of interest in it, but then it's just like how much, you know, how much are they putting the pedal to the metal here, or like how much, you know, pumping the brakes here do they have to do to make it seem fair, or where is the exact line? And I think it's a hard thing to figure out.
Right. Bronze
Boy,
Age. Oh, go ahead. Did you want to?
Oh, I was just saying the grocery store analogy is genius, because I don't know, you know, how many people know this. All the space on, like, if you go to a Walmart, all the space on the grocery store shelf is paid for, essentially.
Yep.
Like, brands are paying for that eye level placement, or not even necessarily eye level for what we think of as eye level, but when you're in the cereal aisle, you know, they're paying for the child eye level of where they're going to be riding by in the cart or whatever. That's what they're paying for. And I think that there are some legit comparisons there. And I mean, again, I'm not somebody that really falls on the, like, this is bad or even necessarily a conflict of interest, but I do think there's like easy solutions. Like when we're talking about like the seller algorithm, you know, you could occasionally feed in randomly some of those other sellers in that category up to the top, instead of having it almost always seemingly go by the total number of viewers. And that's Whatnot's business. That's up to them to do that or not do that. I saw a comment in chat earlier about how you could, you know, you got to filter through all that. You got to deep dive if you want to find some of the smaller sellers. And so to me, it is necessary. It's a questionable business practice, but does it rise to the level of conflict of interest? I don't necessarily think it does in most cases, but I think that it's fair to ask questions.
Yes.
And I really love giving people the forum to bring that up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think the conflict of interest thing really kind of dives into the CGC part of it, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah,
and this algorithm pushing thing is like, it's not exclusive to Whatnot, right? This is like true of YouTube. This is true of Twitch, which I think is a very similar type of thing. I guess it gets a little bit strange with Whatnot specifically, the difference. And again, money and dollars are being spent maybe like figuratively in a sense in terms of like YouTube clicks and stuff like that, but like it's a little bit different, I think, in the Whatnot space because of the consumer aspect, and maybe that makes it a slightly different than, say, Twitch, which is just taking your time.
Right. Absolutely. I want to talk. We're gonna stay on Whatnot for a little bit longer here, because I want to talk about the algorithm for one, and then Whatnot, say, you know, pushing sellers because of the money in it for them. And again, guys, remember the audience here. We're not here. This isn't a pitchfork show. We're not here to point fingers or to assume things. We're here to really, like, I personally look at everything we're going to talk about as a conversation that's going to better the community. It's going to better the hobby and better all these entities, because I don't want any of them going anywhere. I think they're all at heart. They can be very, very positive and lucrative things that push the hobby forward. But let's talk a little bit more about algorithms and compare that with kind of like revenue driving. So I absolutely understand when you're dealing with, you know, apps and online stuff where algorithms come into play, it hits touch and go, and it's tough. As anybody that has a YouTube channel knows, it's like, it's tough for us because we're always finding the algorithms and we can't talk to anybody. You know, so maybe one thing with Whatnot here, because, you know, they're still young, is continue to listen to the sellers, listen to the buyers and the users of the app, and continue to use that to your advantage. You guys Whatnot has the ability to sit and listen to us to improve in the right directions moving forward. So I understand. I understand if this is an algorithm thing. Not saying it's right or it's fair, but it happens, right? What about, though, and Bronze, I'll let you start off first with this one. What if you have somebody that is, you know, and I'm not going to pick on, oh, well, they have a big YouTube and they're selling on my app platform. So it's not even about that. It's about big money books, big money sales. So say Whatnot is looking at people that are selling Amazing Fantasy 15s or Fantastic Four #1s or these big books, and they're driving in thousands and thousands of dollars a sale, each sale, and they're looking at them because they're getting a cut. Whatnot is getting a cut. They take a percentage off top, and then there's all the other fees that are involved, which is normal for any online marketplace. So what if it's not just about algorithms? What if it's about them pushing individual sellers simply because they know what they're selling? So let me give you an example too. What if I am new to Whatnot and I only had, a couple hundred followers, but I got a sale planning and I plan on selling a slab 6.0 Amazing Spider-Man #1 or something like that. And then Whatnot could come to me and say, hey, like we're gonna showcase you on our Instagram. We're gonna do a little graphic. We're gonna put our logo up there and say, oh, Journos Comics, win this, whatever, $1 starting bid. And that's how it can, and maybe they put me, maybe I'm a highlighted show. Does that now change the questionable intent or ethics of the app as a selling platform?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really believe it does. I mean, there's an ethical question there that I believe, like as a consumer and somewhat as a seller on the platform, I'm going to be critical of that and have objections to that. But I also understand it because they're a business. They're in it to make money. Their way they're making money is off the percentages of those sales. It doesn't mean I have to like it. I don't personally find that to be the most consumer friendly avenue they could take. But think about some like eBay. I'm pretty sure that it's safe to say, if eBay has these large, high profile auctions, they're going to drive that into people's feeds a little bit more often. They also have promoted listings on eBay. So this is something that's kind of a nature of the beast when you're talking about online selling platforms where the seller takes a cut. It's a type of bias that it should be assumed to be built into the platform, in my opinion. That's sort of how I look at it.
Okay. Again, very fair point. And whether we like it or not, folks, whether we like it or not, I mean, how do you argue against that, especially when you talk about a free market? Would we rather it just be heavily regulated and have more problems? So I go, Haas. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I mean, there's like in an idealistic way, it would be like, a total meritocracy of like whatever seller wants to sell and whoever's the popular channel is the popular channel or whatever. But yeah, I think if there's they should be incentivized to want to have higher volume of, sales being done or just, higher overall money being spent. And if there are sellers who, sell higher end stuff and they can get a better overall percentage of that, then yeah, I think that they're going to be incentivized to make sure that those people are enjoying the platform and their time on it because that's Whatnot is making the most money off of. So I can't really fault that. And I don't even know if they probably maybe there's a slight favoritism. I mean, in the way that eBay has preferred sellers, right? If you hit a certain level of selling on eBay, you become a preferred store. And I don't even know what that does for them, but I'm sure it helps them in some way. So I think that there's, some levels where this is probably okay. And then there's just probably levels where it's then it gets into a little bit more of a shady territory. And where exactly that line is, I think is hard to say, but I think this is one of those things where as long as Whatnot has the transparency and kind of says what it is, I think everyone can kind of understand, it's hey, well, we got to keep the lights on. We got to make money. So it only makes sense for us to help our big time sellers and then go from there.
Okay. And that makes sense. And, I think I just kind of, for myself looking at it to what I just said, it's if they are really, even if you don't, it's not favoritism. If you don't have a lot of followers and maybe you haven't done much on the app, but you're coming with heat, you're coming with these Silver Age keys, and they want to look at that and say, hey, well, let's give you a little boost, let's give you a little advertising and marketing, and spotlight you and showcase you, then hey, I mean, you put in the work as a seller to come to bat, right? And now they're looking at that, and so and again, if that's the case, guys, because remember here, these are all hypotheticals. We're putting these things out there, not saying that this is or it isn't what they're doing. We're just kind of putting hypotheticals to say what it could be. But I think the takeaway from this Whatnot situation right now, whether you talk about publishing, again, I think there's valid concerns when you think about like a platform selling their own books. But again, I love the grocery store option or example. And then when it comes to algorithms, I think that's probably the biggest thing here, is for Whatnot to just continue to take in the feedback and continue to work on the algorithms. I think if they do that, if they're transparent with their algorithms, that might be the biggest key for them, because like we all know, like, I remember just recently, Comic Tom, I don't know what had happened, but you got a channel of 50,000 plus people, and something happened where he stopped getting monetized, and you can't talk to a real person. Like, this is somebody's livelihood in their business that they're running every day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever. And something within the algorithms like screwed with you, and you can't speak to someone. So hopefully Whatnot can continue that transparency. Their customer service can continue to be something that is very accessible to all of us, sellers and users on the app. So very good take. I would love to hear more of what the community thinks about this. Maybe for some of those folks that we really had negative points of views on Whatnot when it came specifically to maybe their publishing or how they just boosted up certain sellers. Maybe you guys have a little change of mind, a little change of heart. Maybe not. I don't know. But we are going to move on, folks. Common Journey, thank you so much for the super chat. Stern words, and we're gonna get into CGC. So because we talked about a bit of a is there a conflict of interest when you got a selling platform working as a publishing company, throwing their logo on incentives? But what about a third-party grading company? What about a third-party grading company? Does this pose for a conflict of interest? Now, we had Nelson. I want a big shout out to Nelson. We had him on the other day, and we talked about this 30th anniversary Death of Superman exclusive that he did with the gold cover that he was sending all of his books out to CGC, going through the pre-screen to get 309.8s, which isn't hard to do. And then they were going to destroy the rest of the books, and this was going to be exclusive to having 309.8 CGC copies. They went on sale 5 p.m. today. They sold out in less than 20 minutes. Now, we're not going to rehash all the details about that. You guys should definitely go check out that stream. But there are some very important things that I still want to discuss. And with Bronze, with you being on today, I want to give you the lead on this one too. The main thing that I think, what Swaghouse and I, talking with Nelson, I think we both probably agree that I think Nelson, as a retailer that's doing an exclusive, there's nothing shady or nothing necessarily unethical in anything he did. I applaud his business ethic. I applaud his transparency. He brought a lot of reason to some of our questions, whether we may have agreed or not. But there were a lot of things that were still questionable, like just CGC's logo being on back of the book, which he said this was an agreement with both of us, and it's on the back of the book, basically simply to say that this is an exclusive. It's exclusively graded by CGC. That was the context of it. But I'm going to bring something up here, and this is what still, I think, concerned a lot of us here. Let's give me one moment. I'm going to share this on screen because I didn't even show this image during that show. Give me 1 second. We're going to look at the back of the cover real quick here. All right, here's the back of the cover again with CGC's logo, BTC's logo, and CGC's as well. But it does say, I don't know if you guys can read that. It does say right here, exclusively graded by CGC. So they do add context to why it's there, but I think still a lot of people have a problem with it just being on the book. But so we did show this. Let's go back to this real quick. CGC has now since taken this article down. They said CGC exclusive Death of Superman 30th anniversary gold foil variant. They don't even say big time collectibles in the headline. They do say it in, we've partnered. In the article, they say we've partnered with Big Time, but they say right here, CGC exclusive. Right? So questionable. They pulled this down. Maybe they felt like, okay, that's giving out the wrong impression. But look at this, guys. This is something that we didn't even address on the show the other night. Here's the label, okay? Death of Superman 30th anniversary right here. First appearance of Doombreaker, gold foil cover. Jurgens, yada, yada, yada. Number, DC release date, number 1 of 300. Because remember, they were doing that because CGC is witnessing all 300 be graded, and that's why that's there. But look at this right here. CGC foil edition. On this label, it does not even say Big Time Collectibles. It says CGC foil edition. So, Bronze, what are your, with all that's come to light on this issue, what are your thoughts currently?
So we're at the great setup, explaining some of the history so far here. I want to say one thing real fast, which is I made a meme about this the other day, and I had a few people come at me a little hot saying like, oh, but you don't have the facts right. This isn't a CGC exclusive. I actually never said it was a CGC exclusive, so I don't normally know where that came from. But you had a lot of people kind of jumping up and talking about that. And then, you had the interview with Nelson, which props to you guys for having him on. That's something that, if no one reached out to him, I was gonna be like, hey, can we get your word out there about what happened and get your side of the story, give you a chance to get your facts straight and get everything out there. Because that needs to happen too, because mistakes can be made, genies can get out of bottles, and how companies react to that really matters. But it's important to note this is not the first exclusive that BTC had with the Death of Superman book. They also had the Batman 125. If I'm not mistaken, and I might have my memory wrong on that, I do believe that one says BTC and CGC exclusive. I might have that wrong. Definitely mentioned CGC on the label as well. And this is where you kind of start to come into the real problems. For the record, I don't necessarily have many issues, especially with integrity when it comes to what BTC has done here on their side of it. Right. I think there are a couple kind of what if kind of scenarios that need to be played with when it comes to the extra copies that need to be destroyed. How can we be accountable for those? That sort of thing. When it comes to the CGC side of this, though, and I'm being very clear, that's where I put most of the onus here. Yep. This is a problem. This is a problem because it doesn't pass the sniff test. It doesn't pass the eye test. CGC's label, in my personal opinion, should not be on a book. They shouldn't be advertising their own graded book in the way that they are. You have clear issues coming to light with, how do we know that every book they're grading here is a 9.8? They have some sort of agreement that says we're going to do 309.8s. Well, some of them. Go ahead.
I was just going to try to add context. Basically, and this is what Nelson stated to us. He has 1,000 of these books. They're card stock, straight off the press of DC, delivered straight to CGC through Lunar, I believe, right? So CGC gets 1,000 of them. He puts an order in for 1,000 pre-screen 9.8s, just like any one of us would if we're submitting books. And once, in getting 30% of 1,000 to get 9.8s in a card stock probably isn't that hard at all. So once they go through them and they're doing pre-screens and, this is a 9.8 or whatever, once they get to that 300, they would probably stop and not even pre-screen any of the rest because now they have their 300.
Right. And they also probably aren't going to come out with any 9s or 10s, but I bet you there's probably a couple in there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was something that even Nelson himself said, oh, we didn't talk about that. So I guess, look, if they were like, oh, this is a 99, well, throw it away because it's not. Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
It's called pre-screen 9.8, not pre-screen 9.9.
Right? Yep.
Well, but on a pre-screen, if you get a 9.9, they'll give it to you.
They will? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Or a 10 because they're grading at least a 9.8 or above.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and hey, I don't know. Maybe they will come out and 10 of these will be 9.9s. We really don't know. But it's something that should be addressed. Also, in that conversation, this is the one point that I don't know if the question really got, delivered or whatever. I'm not really sure if there was maybe a better answer that wasn't given there. I don't want to put Nelson on the spot. He's not here to talk about it. But what about the I think it was Mickey that mentioned it. What about the books that, it arrives to a customer's home damaged and they need to replace it? Yep. If the slab's the only thing that's damaged, sure, they can reholder it, not a problem. Yep. But if the book was damaged and it's one of those 300, so did they destroy all the books already, or are they holding 100 for those kind of scenarios and then they're going to destroy those? We don't know.
He implied that there's like this ambiguous window before they destroy it, where maybe they do customer fulfillment, and I don't know, maybe he's going to be SOL if they like, you only have 1 week to fulfill or whatever. But I'm sure that there's like probably this month-long gray area where CGC still has these books or whatever.
Yeah. And I'm sure that out of 1,000, it's certainly reasonable to assume that you're going to get 300 9/8, 100%. But there's other issues here too. Like going back to another example of something that's happened before, when you talk about, there was the Young Avengers one, I think it was a Wizard edition that came out as a 9.5.
Oh yeah, they were doing a special 9.5 for that book.
Yeah, so I mean, what grade is that? Like, are you saying that were those actually 9.8s and you're grading as 9.5 as part of a gimmick? It kind of harkens back to the bad idea acetate thing, the sheet that they. There's just some really questionable stuff coming out of CGC to the point where I think it's fair for us, the community, to have serious questions about this, and then to have CGC, to have Big Time Collectibles come out and provide some information, provide some context would be nice. So far, Big Time Collectibles has done I think probably the best they can do on that, and I give them all the props for that. CGC has been radio silence. That post that they put up, no communication about why it said CGC exclusive, even if it's just somebody in the PR department not fully understanding that. Who mocked up the one that said it was a CGC exclusive that got taken down right away on the actual back of the book? Like, was that an early design that got rejected? Own up to the mistakes and say what happened. Give us some of that transparency to help kind of alleviate, because this is a sticky situation that I think some could argue shouldn't even happen. And that I'm part of that. I don't think that any of this is good for the integrity of CGC at all.
Yeah. I hear you, man. Swag, so I'm going to let you jump in. I'm going to address Monotone's comment here. Doing that is just branding and marketing to push CGC themselves as the be-all, end-all for all things comics related. So I'm going to address this because there was a lot of people, and I think we do this. We jump the gun in comic books a lot. CGC's grading their own books. I mean, but look, I mean, how could I can understand why we would assume that CGC exclusive, and then we see a picture of their logo on a book. I get it, but we jump the gun a lot. CGC is not selling this book, guys. That's another fact that needs to be known. It's being sold exclusively through Big Time Collectibles. They sold out in less than 20 minutes when it went live today. So those are facts that need to be addressed so we don't, create an argument that invalidates, nullifies itself. If we have real concern, we need to have our facts lined up. So what we believe to be fact now, because Nelson, Big Time, amazingly transparent, humbled by his transparency. This still is a standard store exclusive that Nelson ordered, just like anyone else would. He put an order in with CGC the same way any other customer would, but there were some other stipulated agreements involved there. He went to CGC and said, well, can I kind of brand this to say it's exclusively graded by you? Yeah, let's slap our logo on there. And then CGC decided to call this stuff a partnership. Nelson explained why he believes it is a partnership. And to be honest, I don't know if I agree or disagree. I'm kind of in the middle there of like, I think just for optic sense, I wouldn't even use that term. But this is what I said. There's no money in it for CGC, or so it seems. They're not getting a percentage of it on the secondary market. They're not getting a percentage of sales. I don't think there was any like, well, yeah, hey, big time, like you gotta pay us this or that for us to throw our label on it. No, it was standard grading fees that any of us would pay for CGC. So there's no money in it for them in those literal senses. But this is absolutely a way for them to, say, oh, well, shoot, how else can we brand ourselves? How else can we market ourselves? How else can we put ourselves out there in a way that's going to catch the consumer's eyes to say, CGC is king, keep coming back to CGC.
Yeah. Or inspire other retailers to want to do these types of things.
To want to do this same thing. And now you have exclusivity with CGC, which takes, other retailers getting exclusives, not wanting to send their books to CBCS or anything. Hey guys, we'll destroy 700 copies for you. We'll grade the 300. We'll slap our logo on the back. We'll do an art. We'll help promote because we'll put an article on our website. CGC exclusive. So I go, Haas, knowing those things now, even though we have a lot of facts that puts to rest some of the extreme, conspiracy theories, even when putting those aside, there are still a lot of concerns here. And it goes back to the branding that CGC is doing and their intent of why they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just going back, for me, we had the conversation with Nelson, and shout outs to him. And I actually think what Nelson is doing is totally within his right. And he did it, whatever, he did it, the right way. He followed all the rules that were given to him as a retailer. So I have no ill will to him. I hope he sells out, which I think he already did. My thing is this: after hearing about how this went down straight from Nelson, and I kind of brought this up on our live stream, but I thought about it over the last couple of days, and I feel even more strongly about what I had said. And my feeling is this: it's simple. I don't think CGC should have any responsibility in destroying the other 700 and making it so that it's only a 300 print count. I actually don't think that, as they describe themselves on their website. Now, if they want to change what their business is, if they want to rebrand what they are as a business, then maybe we can have that conversation. But for what they stand for, I don't think that they should have an involvement in manufacturing the collectible or creating the print run. I think their job is to just recognize this is a collectible that was made and we are slabbing it and grading it for you. Them helping the retailer make 300 copies, I think, is way overstepping. I think that they should do the pre-screen. They can grade however many it takes to get those 300, but it's up to Nelson or BTC, and they have to be the person that destroys it. And I understand that, Nelson was saying, but then the community's not going to know if I really did destroy it, or there's going to be no transparency there. And this is my thing where I say, well, this is why we can't have nice things. I mean, I just think that this is like the rule has to be this way. Now, what could change in the future is, maybe what you have to do with DC, since you have to order 1,000, as we learned from Nelson, maybe Nelson just has to pay whatever it costs to get 1,000 and say, only send me 300, and DC can give them like some notification that says we only got 300. And then Nelson has to hope that all of them grade 9.8s, but however many it breaks out after that is what he's left with. And these are I know the end result is the same. I mentioned this where it's like, at the end of the day, Nelson winds up with whatever, but I feel so strongly that I don't think CGC should be allowed to manufacture the 300 print count. And I think from CGC's perspective, I want to extend them an olive branch where I think that they're trying to do a good thing for the community by saying like, hey, we're going to help make that 300 number thing, and we're going to help do that. But I just don't think that they should be dipping their toes into this, because I think of them as someone who recognizes the collectible, not someone who shapes the collectible.
Right. I hear you, man. I'm actually gonna be a little harsher right now on CGC. I honestly, this is, and for those that know me and watch me, I am like really anti conspiracy theorist. I'm always the optimist, but I think CGC is seeing this as an opportunity, especially that this is their like second go with Big Time. They're seeing this as a marketing opportunity, like straight up. I don't think too much. Like, to be quite honest, I think they did an injustice to Nelson and Big Time by not even putting Big Time's name in the headline, and by not even putting Big Time on the label. So I'm going to go one step further and say, shame on you, CGC, because outside of putting your logo on the book, because Nelson, I think, was hyped about that idea, so that's cool. Outside of anything else, you guys are running with this. CGC, you are running with this, trying to hijack this for personal gain. Bronze Age. Am I being too harsh?
No, because here's the other element. There's several layers of conflict of interest here. Here's one of them. This is so far an exclusive that they've done with Big Time Collectibles on 2 books, and I believe there was some plans for some more. How much did it cost? Can other retailers get involved? Like, what is this, pay to play? Is that what's going on here? Did they sign this kind of exclusive agreement and set the bar? I mean, there's a lot of different layers here that get involved. So when it comes to CGC using this as kind of a marketing push for this new program they're theoretically rolling out, I think that it definitely, they should be supporting their partner here, other than kind of riding on the coattails of letting us say, like, we let them do this. And also, one other thing that occurs to me, like looking at this label, it's not on the book, man. So I mean, like, this label's just a COA. That's all it is.
Yeah, I was making. Oh, sorry to jump your parts. I was just making the joke. Someone should totally crack this book and send theirs into CBCS.
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
it would be a hilarious flex book to have.
It would be great. It'd be great.
Not to give people ideas.
I just think it's funny that, for years, CGC has kind of sneered at COAs, like, don't even bother sending them in. And I'm not even saying that they should have people send their COAs, because there's too many ways to fake a COA.
Yeah.
But that kind of strikes me as a funny point here. And yeah, they're not supporting their partner. They're not coming out and saying, this is a program that other retailers can take part in. So again, when you have a pay-to-play kind of program, that is very controversial at the least, and could be a conflict of interest if they don't allow certain retailers to do this. And they say, no, you're not big enough, or you're not the right fit in our business. I mean, CGC should be Switzerland when it comes to anything to do with comic books, if they want to keep their integrity, in my eyes. Maybe that's too harsh of an outlook, but that's how I feel about it. Yeah. And every step you take away from that, if you're going to get involved in things like this, as long as you even the playing field, it minimizes the impact of that. And maybe they've done that. I don't know that they have or haven't, but that's part of the problem.
Yeah. I want to say too that, like, we've addressed the logo on the back of the CGC logo on the back of the book. We've addressed them saying CGC foil edition. And not even say, like, how is this a CGC foil edition? Did CGC make the foil cover? It goes back to this. This is not proper. This is a Big Time collectibles exclusive foil edition. That's simply, like you said, Bronze, COA'd and graded by CGC. We talked about the headline: CGC exclusive, Death of Superman 30th anniversary. The only thing that I really see is being like, okay, I'm not mad at the 1 in 30, like, because, so here, take for example, if I have 100 books that of the same book, and I want to send them into CGC for 9.8 pre-screens, and I say, guys, I want 100 of them. Can you, like, just number the label with all the hundreds that I get back. Maybe that's an extra charge because they're labeling that, and they say, oh, fine, sure, because that does solidify that CGC indeed only graded 100 of them in 9.8, but it doesn't extend their involvement to being a part of the book at all or a part of anything else. They're just basically giving the consumers a little more validation that we, as a third-party grading company, issued this label stating that, yes, this book is a 9.8 grade, and this is one of the 100s that we graded. But the problem with that then actually comes down to what it even means if somebody else is sending that book in later to get graded. So that's where I understand that there's no real conflict of interest there, but it's nonsensical because it's nullified. For example, if you took this book out of the slab and cracked it, it nullifies anything that the label says, and it nullifies that logo being on the back. Exclusively.
Yeah, how would they grade it if you cracked it and you sent it back in?
The book isn't graded. Exactly, it's not graded.
You know, to get graded again. I mean, they're gonna grade it, right? Like,
well, then yeah. So then, what if somebody has it raw now? Shoot, maybe they got it and a 9.8, and maybe they're like, I'm gonna press and clean this and try to get a 9.9. What if they send it back to CGC? What are they going to do?
Well, it's just, it just, I mean, but then you could just cause, riot in the community because you could be, imagine, like, I'm not saying like anyone would actually spend their time. Well, maybe there would be somebody who do this, but you could crack it and then you could send it back in, and then you can have a graded one that doesn't have a number, and then you can start a conspiracy of like, I bought this raw. There's raw books that exist out there.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. So, oof. See, and again, like, and I know I got a little excited there, but I hope that my excitement wasn't taken as I'm being even extremely angry. I just think it's crazy that there is a real issue here because there's so many like loopholes. Like these things, the logo on the back of the book is supposed to be stamping and certifying something. It's supposed to be making a statement that this is something. This number on the label is supposed to be certifying and stating something, but it can so easily be altered, and that is, I think, a really big problem. So
yeah. I think we talked about like, oh, can there be actual printed numbers on the thing or whatever? Like if CGC really wants to do this and like try to make this thing for the community, which again, I don't think that they should have involvement in this, then like Nelson should go to Florida with like a stamp that you can change the numbers, and he manually stamps them with CGC's approval of like, here's the 309.8s, then you can manually stamp them and we'll do it. And that'll be the way that it's numbered or whatever.
Well,
something
to
like
that point, to that point, CGC, this is something I got to give a shout out to Aaron Yeezy, who brought this up to me. I didn't realize that there is actually books that receive a blue label by CGC that have a hand numbered numbering system, like 1 of 300, 2 of 300, whatever, because that is part of the manufacturing process. It's from a German publisher. I can't remember who off the top of my head. And so, the other part of this is there are ways that this could be done. I think CGC or possibly Big Time Collectibles, but it seems like CGC probably did this because this was the way to kind of put their spin on it, right? Like this is the way to do that. But there's other ways that could have solved some of these loophole problems that we're bringing up that would have been more ironclad. Like it's written right on there, if we, and all the other copies got destroyed after that, we know it's, 6 of 300 because it has that writing on it or has that stamp on it or whatever it might be, a hologram, anything.
Yeah.
Indeed, guys. I mean, well, we are going to move on for this. We're still going to talk about CGC, guys, but I think this situation here, what I want you guys watching to take out of this is, I don't want anybody crucifying Big Time Collectibles. I think Nelson is a really, really transparent guy running a good business, and I think he has great good intentions. And I think there's a lot of really innovating creativity in what he and CGC are trying to do here. The book is beautiful, and if if I could have bought one raw for like $20, I think I would have bought one for sure. 20, $30, just because it's nostalgic to me, Death of Superman, all that. But I think we leave here though with the fact that there's still holes. And maybe like Swaggle said too, maybe this doesn't get solved unless CGC rebrands what they are as a business entity. And I think that could be a whole other conversation in of itself. But I hope that you guys, there's a lot of facts out there. I don't want anybody going out and blackballing Nelson and Big Time Collectibles. They're doing some good things, but they're all lingering issues. And I do hope to see this conversation continue so we can, again, get to some forward movement. And again, I want CGC to freaking jump in on these conversations. But with CGC, we got other stuff to talk about here, because I'm going to talk about signature series. And again, and of course, we're focused on conflict of interest, guys. Before we get into this, though, I want to remind everyone, we got the links below to Bronze Age and Swaggle channel, guys. So if you're not subbed to them, please go do so. I absolutely value what they do on their channels, what they bring to this community. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them here tonight. So definitely go give them a sub and support. Let's talk about signature series. Again, I want to preface a little bit here. I actually like the signature series idea for CGC. I'm not mad. A lot of people are mad because they're like, oh, I wish they were like CBCS and, just authenticated signatures. Well, look, they're kind of protecting themselves by doing this. It's a business move too. It's a business strategy. It really ups the ante, and it's popular, these signature series events. But if they aren't comfortable saying, yeah, we didn't witness it, we don't want to validate it. Look, you can't get mad at them for that. So that's fine. But I've had my issues with signature series just because I felt like, CGC has all these issues, right? Turnaround time, hurting, and just getting longer and longer, quality control issues. Some of those things, it seems like they're actually working on now. But I felt for a while that, man, they're pushing these signature series events, and they're just forgetting about the little guy that's been paying their bills. But we're seeing maybe a turning of the corner here with that stuff. Cool. Now, a lot of pushback that they got recently with the signature series is them partnering with Whatnot. We're bringing Whatnot back into it. When they did this live stream on Whatnot, and people were like, oh, here, CGC's selling their own books. But I guess it was just a giveaway. I did not witness the sale. And then there was also, I know Jim Lee was a part of that. And then I think later that day, Jim Lee had his own actual sale on, maybe it was his own Whatnot, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you jump in on this one. Just maybe you could tell me, like, maybe you know a little more than me about what happened around those events, but I'm sure you are fully aware of the perception from a lot of the community. But understanding what you know of the events and the perception that was going around, do you feel that there was any type of possible, and again, even gray area, conflict of interest going on with now CGC and Whatnot, or even maybe how they're partnering with some of these artists and creators with their signature books?
Well, this is like my, I made a video this week talking about like going down a certain road and where we might be. And this is again, my like, end of the, or the, like I like to call it the doomer scenario, but I don't mean to push it this way. It just feels like this is kind of where it's going. Now, let me back it up. As far as that specific thing, the CGC signing with Jim Lee, I didn't watch it. So I don't truly know exactly what happened. What I can get a sense of what did happen there was, they're just doing kind of a co-branding sponsorship. They're witnessing a Jim Lee signature. People are buying certain books. I don't know whose books they were, like, whatever, but maybe they're Jim Lee's. I don't know what he was signing, if they're like back issues that Jim Lee had, or if they're like new DC books that he just happened to have with him. I don't know. I don't even know what they were selling, but CGC is doing this witness. So essentially what Whatnot and CGC are doing and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more of this, is they're taking that experience that you would get at a Comic-Con, where you would be able to wait in line for a Jim Lee autograph and they would witness his signature, and you'd be able to buy a book from Jim Lee right then and there and get it signed and then go off to CGC and slap it. So that seems fine, right? That's all well and good. But where I see this going is it's going to be so easy and efficient for people like Jim Lee and soon other artists and things like that in CGC and whatnot to do these things. I got to be honest. I think that this will just phase out like autographs at cons. Because if you're an artist and all it takes for you is to turn on a camera or like go to CGC and be like, oh, I don't have to go to the con. I don't have to like do the whole thing and travel around the country. I can just go to Florida one time and like sign like 1,000 books. Like, why would you ever travel to a con? You know, like this is going to be the thing. So, and again, it's not to knock them because it's a super efficient way. It's just like, these are the types of things I'm saying where we're like, oh man, I think that this is like going to be so profitable for all these people involved that I think that it's going to de-incentivize the whole con experience and like that whole thing. That's my, you know, doomer scenario of how I see it.
Right. Maybe there would be something that can help. Like I like Skeff said right here, you know, this could definitely help people that can't get to cons.
Right. And I think it does, but I would say that it's going to be so helpful that it's going to actually like nullify the need for cons. That's what I think.
I wonder if you would have to then evolve the con experience, like both for the consumer and the artist. So maybe there's a bigger paycheck involved for the artist or for whoever's doing something at an actual con. Maybe the cost of the signature goes up at the con next to if there's some special online event or something like that. So maybe there's ways to get creative that can bring in more incentivizing for the different experiences. Bronze Age, were you, I don't know, were you watching any of those streams, or do you have any inside information that you're privy to, or whether you do or not? You know, again, do you feel like there's any type of gray area of CGC working with other industry entities like Whatnot to bring these things to their platforms?
Yeah, so I have some thoughts on this for sure, but I do want to take a second. I don't mean this like a gotcha call out kind of thing. It might come off that way. I really don't mean that. Swag, you had some questions about what happened on that stream, you know, whose books were they, etc. The host of that stream is in chat right now. So I'm just saying, if he wants to answer any of those questions or kind of providing that clarity, I know, and I'm saying this, I know personally that Skeff is big on transparency and willing to kind of answer some of those questions. So maybe he would. When it comes to that stream, what I'll tell you is I didn't watch the first one. I saw some clips from it, but I'll tell you what people that I trust very well that watched that Jim Lee stream said, the one he did on his own personal Whatnot afterwards, is that the CGC staff were helping him run his Whatnot and adding items to his store, etc. Now, maybe they were just helping him. I really don't know, but
because they were already there doing their thing prior.
Yeah, because they'd done the previous stream. So, but were they, you know, who's getting the money from all of Jim Lee's Whatnot sales? How are they being provided? It's one of those things where when you have two massive players in the comic book space right now, in the comic book market, Whatnot and CGC, and then you throw in another massive player, which is Jim Lee, who is one of the most famous comic creators of all time, you have a lot going on there. And I'll beat the drum till the day I die. Like if we had more transparency into what was happening in these events, I think it would put a lot of minds at ease. I don't necessarily, like, if the situation is what it is and CGC goes on Whatnot purely to do giveaways and to promote their products, I have no problem with that. I really don't. But I think it's this other sort of like, I don't want to say nail in the coffin. It's just the metaphor that comes to mind. It's just this other extra layer of things we have to kind of wonder about when it comes to CGC's business practices. And I've seen it mentioned in chat a couple times, especially when it comes to everything that's happened since they were acquired by Blackstone. There's just this kind of repetitive kind of nature of like all these moral questions keep coming up. And I just want to mention another thing. A lot of conspiracies being thrown around that comment. Questions are being asked. I'm not saying this happened, I'm saying that we don't know exactly what happened, and I think it's fair to have some questions about what actually did occur.
Right.
That's kind of where I'll get to. When it comes to the signature series in general, I will say that there is kind of one misconception that gets thrown around a lot. Not every signature series book is witnessed. Let's stop saying that, because that's not true. That's what CGC would love to talk about. But artists themselves can send in books and say that it was signed by them. And you might say, well, of course they signed it, right? Well, if you know what happened in baseball cards and sports collectibles in the 90s, there was a large rash of signatures that were found out to be fake, that were signed by relatives, that were signed by agents, because they could pump out more collectibles, get them signed quicker, that kind of thing. Now, maybe that didn't happen in any of these cases. I'm not saying it did, but to say that they were all witnessed by a CGC witness is not true. I also know people that have slid books into a submission at a con that were previously signed by the person that was signing, and then they got a yellow label as being witnessed. So there's breaks in that chain that need to be pointed out.
That is very interesting. Yeah. I want to note here, it's really interesting because we're sitting here talking about conflict of interest, but it seems the theme, talking about Whatnot, talking about CGC, a lot of it actually comes down to not even a conflict of interest, but a lack of transparency. And outside of, I think, the issue that we just addressed with the label and the logo on a certain book.
Yeah. There's lack of transparency, and then there's what it looks like by what you put out, right?
Right.
Because it can't read your mind, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that I really hope everyone watching right now is seeing this. Like, and we know we keep asking the questions, and we keep having concerns and demanding transparency. We got to stop. I'm going to say this again. We got to stop jumping to conclusions. We got to stop with the pitchforks, and we got to stop the conspiracy theories. It gets us nowhere. And you know where it gets you? To a dead end, because, and we're going to talk about this a little more, people want to close the doors. There are probably people in this industry that want to be transparent, but they're scared to be, because every time they crack open that door, they're getting bum rushed. And then it doesn't matter what they say. So they slam the door back in your face. Why? Because you can't listen to reason. So you all have a responsibility. We have to hold ourselves responsible. That's why people get mad at me all the time. Oh, you're just sucking up to the fan. Like, no. Guys, no one is without responsibility. Every action has a reaction, and we need to understand what is productive and what is counterproductive. We got to start operating in a way to where we put our lawyer hats on, we put our detective hats on, and we come out the gate with some humility and respect, and we have these conversations out the gate before we start picking up pitchforks and playing the telephone game and creating gossip. So, because I think if we start doing that, it'll give. Can you imagine if I brought Nelson with Big Time Collectibles on my show and was like, Nelson, you're in cahoots with CGC, and I bet you're paying them to say this, that, and this. And I mean, I was just accusing him. Maybe I started making memes. Of him and calling him a clown and all that. Like, do you think Nelson would ever want to get back on a live stream with anybody on YouTube? I wouldn't. And then what are you going to do? It's like gaslighting, because then now you get a reaction out of him. He shuts the door in your face. Oh, what are you trying to hide, Nelson, with Big Time Collectibles? See, you shady. You're this, you're that, you're this. So let's take a step back, because I think we're revealing here that a lot of this isn't even necessarily unethical practices. It's about, I love this word now, optics. And it's about us demanding transparency from these entities, because at the end of the day, I think that's going to help all of us out in the long run. So let's see. Okay, I want to let me bring up some notes here, because we talked about A little bit about private signatures. We talked about the partnering with the whatnot, the live stream. I think I agree with what both of you guys said as well, is that this can open the door for opportunities. Swaggle, you did, talk about like how things evolve. And sometimes that's just the nature of the beast. It's like the brick and mortar, falling victim to a digitized, delivery age. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
And I think that's my thing. It's like, just going back to like the signing thing, I'm sure I typically default to trust in most situations. I really try to do that. Yeah. I typically default to trust in most situations. So I have no reason to not believe. Of course, like Whatnot is selling some books. They make some money. The CGC is paying for the grading, witnessing the signing. They doing their thing. And Jim Lee is, selling presumably some DC inventory or his own stock. And then everybody wins, right? And then people on the other end of the screen get the collectible that they want. So I have no reason to think that that's not exactly what's going on. I think my whole thing is it's just, you can see, this is the path. At least that's how I see it. And it's like you're saying, like the phasing out of the brick and mortar. It's not that this is where it's going. And I think that there's no stopping this. And I'm feeling like an old man yelling at a cloud. And it's not that I'm against where it's going. It's just sort of like, hey, while we're, kind of moving this way, let's just kind of give some feedback to these entities to say, hey, I see that this is going to become a big thing. And this is probably going to be like the way that, artists do a lot of signings in the future. And this is probably going to be very, very profitable for them. But hey, let's just make sure that we can do these XYZ things as well. Or, hey, when you're designing your app or when you're promoting your event, make sure you frame it like this or say this or give us some context into this. And I think that those things are going to go a long way.
Right. Bronze, do you want to kind of give a closing statement on just this piece right here before we move on? We got about two more talking points today before we close out, guys. But just final thoughts on this part, Bronze.
Right. I think that one thing that people that may not be familiar with my take on things or the way that I look at things, I am never ever going to go out and be like, we need to attack this person for what they did. I'm a big believer in taking that kind of temperate tone but I think that it's important to not ignore situations. It's important not to ignore. It's not what these companies are doing necessarily in any one of these moves, but it's how they're doing it. It's how they're choosing to execute it. And you hear me talk about transparency a lot, and that's something I mentioned because you could say that doesn't necessarily matter for a lot of businesses. I would argue it still kind of is important to me when it comes to most of the businesses that I choose to patronage, provide my money to. But when it comes to a company that is about authentication and grading of collectibles, transparency is something that is very important. That is something that, you're saying, we stand behind this. This is our reputation saying that this is this grade, that this is this authentic comic book. And there have been too many questions raised that haven't been appropriately answered for me to say that we need to ignore that. I have no interest in vilifying CGC itself as a company. I think they're supposed to operate as a company that makes money and keeps producing collectibles. And frankly, I want CGC and CBCS, any other grading companies, EGS, I want them all to succeed. I want more competition in that space. I want them to be, a high tide raises all ships. If there's a big question at the top of the food chain in collectibles about authenticity and transparency, that shines that dark shadow, if you will, on the rest of the hobby to a certain extent. I want, the light of day will erase all those shadows. And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see us kind of in a place where we can raise these questions and hopefully have a company like CGC hear that and go, okay, we do need to provide more insight into what's happening here to kind of allay those concerns. When we make an announcement about a new program, we need to consider some of these things that people are talking about in the past so that we can kind of make sure that there is this level of transparency that the community expects.
Right. Good stuff, guys. I do want to add just to kind of to that, going back to CGC pulling down that article, I'm going to sit and I told you, I'm going to be harsh with CGC and say they were like, hey, we're going to use this. We're going to push ourselves. We're going to use it to our advantage. And again, I'm not saying that that's bad. I just think they took it too far. And look, them pulling down that article, maybe they realize that, maybe they actually listen. Now, what they should do, they should come out and say, they should say something that we listened, but They didn't. So I want to, this is a reminder to everyone watching here too. Just because somebody does something and then maybe does something different doesn't mean they're doing it out of, and a sneaky, unethical, intent. It could be because they actually realize and learn. And remember what I was just saying. It's about them running and closing the door on you because they don't know how they're going to get, clobbered by the reaction of the pitchfork mobs. So don't just always assume the worst with companies. So again, I don't know why CGC pulled that article, but if they actually pulled it because they realized that they weren't giving big time collectibles enough credit, or they realized, oh man, I can see why people are thinking that CGCs, that we're great in our own books now. Let's just pull that. That's a win for us, guys. And it means that CGC is listening and watching to some degree. Are they still doing it right? Maybe not. Can they still do a lot more? Absolutely. Let's hope for more in the future, right? So we got something else that I want to address that we're going to kind of end the show off here. And then I hope we can just kind of loop everything back around. And I have to address this. I talked about the Dazzlers in the beginning of the show.
I bought 40 on eBay.
I got 40 copies.
I hear Swag is 40 available now.
Yeah.
Actually, hit up my inbox. And I'll tell you what, guys, I got it priced at like what? This is $25 near mint copy. I'll sell it to you for $100. And I'll give you a shout out on my channel. No, I'm just kidding. But no, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. This has been probably the biggest conflict of interest argument that has been going on for a long time. We'll go beyond the last few weeks, C2, E2, and all that. There is actually another conversation that I would love to have with some awesome special guests in the future about how we can evolve exclusive variants and how retailers can actually partner with quote unquote influencers that will actually eliminate this, kind of special treatment or all the controversy that has happened over the last few weeks, even with the convention in Canada, and with Jason with Black Flag come out and admitting that we're going to do this again in Chicago. I'm going to have a separate line for influencers and I'm going to give them 10 books and all you guys are just getting like, I actually have an idea that I think can still keep the competitive pricing on the secondary market for, why am I picking that book up? Exclusives that can actually be advantageous to, maybe like big sellers on Whatnot or whatever, and exclusives and for collectors that are trying to get their hands on them. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to go way beyond that, way beyond the drama of the last few weeks. And we're just going to go back to the optics of people that have YouTube channels and that have a certain level of success. And they may talk about hot book lists, top 10 lists. These books are booming. These books are doing this or that. And maybe they have an eBay store. Maybe they sell on Whatnot. Maybe they do live streams on Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And where's that fine line drawn when it comes to conflict of interest? We have YouTubers that sell comics that have partnerships with certain apps. We have certain apps that have partnerships with eBay. So the big question to ask here is this just business, right? And it goes back to, maybe it's just about transparency and running an ethical business and how we perceive it, or is there really a conflict of interest here? And so, Bronze, we'll start with you on this. And I know this is like, I'm not setting you up with a very, strict question here because this can be a bit of a broad topic of discussion here, but I'm trying to look at a focal point. And I'll ask by saying this, I guess, like, at what point, let me give you an example, because I didn't start selling comics myself until like the beginning of this year. When I had like 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. But it was always my goal to start selling comics, always. I always wanted to own my own shop. And finally, you know, last year I bought my own little collection, and then I started getting a few more, and I had my first sale on Whatnot, I think in December of 2020. Mm-hmm. Right when that happened, I got people that had watched my channel for a long time telling me that I'm a sellout, you know, I'm ripping grandma and grandpas off and all this stuff. Like, do you think it is really, is there a point where it becomes a conflict of interest? Or do you think maybe it's more of just this optic of people having pitchfork mentality, and it's really a matter of, you know, because you have success, I'm going to say that you're doing this wrong? Or is there any validity in this to say there is some type of conflict of interest when a YouTuber is actually selling comic books?
Yeah, I mean, right at the point where you start buying up all the Dazzlers, that's exactly where you cross the line. So, look, I think this is something, you know, we kind of talked about this before the show. Something I want to bring up if we're going to talk about this. From at least my perspective, I have to present that there is a conflict here. I am a YouTuber. I am arguably, I don't really think so that I'm an influencer, but there's probably some people that would say some of us are, that kind of thing. So that needs to be baked into the conversation. Point number one. So take everything. This is just my opinion. This is how I view it. Now, I also am a YouTuber that doesn't really make content saying you should buy this book, you should do that. If anything, I actually do the opposite. I kind of try to break people of their FOMO, or at least provide them the devil's advocate perspective. So that's a big part of what I do. Part of the reason I do that is because I know I also sell comic books, and I don't want to have anybody say, you're selling Moon Knight 1 because you were talking about how awesome it is. And, you know, I kind of want to avoid those conversations. But I also don't necessarily fault those that do that. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's the level of transparency you provide. There isn't necessarily a more clear-cut conflict of interest for a YouTuber or let's say a big person on IG or whatever selling than there is some, like a comic book store. Yes. Like, what is a comic book store? A comic book store is a reseller by nature. Yep. Most comic book stores, and this is, exclusives kind of changes a little bit, they are producing their actual comic books. Even if they're buying it, from Marvel, DC, through Penguin, through Lunar, through, Diamond, through all these different sources, they're reselling those comic books. Now they're doing that as a retailer, but they're also buying up collections and they're selling them. They have IGs, they have whatnots. And I think that to a certain extent, you have to kind of view the people in the community that do this as sort of like an independent comic book store, which most comic book stores are independent. And I think that's an important way to kind of couch this whole conversation. There are definitely ways where it can become that slippery slope. And I really encourage people in this space to continue to be upfront about what they're doing, to be upfront about, the types of products they're offering, the services they're offering, the platforms they're offering them on. If they are receiving, promotional copies from a service, I'd recommend that they disclose that. Make that part of the agreement you have with that group is that, hey, I got 100 copies from you to sell this. Like when I do giveaways on my channel or stuff like that, I mentioned like, this is a promotion I'm doing with this person, or this company decided to send me this book so I could share some with you guys. It's a win for everybody. I always disclose the nature of those agreements because I think it's so important to be upfront about that. And if you want to continue to be respected in this industry, you have to approach it from that angle, because there are people that have lost that respect based on how they've reacted or based on their lack of transparency recently. Again, I'm a huge believer in not bringing out the pitchforks on those people. I think you should choose to not support them necessarily, not follow them if you have problems with that. I think there's a lot of hate and vitriol that gets directed at certain people just because people don't respect that. And a lot of that ties into what you mentioned earlier, Chris. It's things like a form of jealousy or a form of envy for the platform and the mouthpiece they might have in some cases. And that, the community needs to be honest with itself a little bit about why some of those reasons that they have issues with this take place. That's just sort of my initial thoughts on it there. I can't wait to hear what Mickey has to say about this.
Love it, man. Yeah, Swag Man. So, and just to add, before you jump in here, I think about like, oh, well, we as YouTubers shouldn't sell books that we're talking about. But my question is why? As long as, like, to some of what Bron said, as long as we're being honest, right? So say, for example, and I know you and we do a lot of market videos where we're looking at what books are doing. Say I do a list of like, affordable X-Men keys that you could buy right now. And I have this Dazzler #1, but I got 20 something copies, right? But I put this up and I say Dazzler #1, first solo series of Dazzler. And I say current 9.8 CGC fair market value, this 3 years ago, that's a 45% increase in value. Raw average value is this, 3 years ago was this, that's a 82 increase in value. Does that change the game if I'm doing that? Is that wrong? Is that a conflict of interest? But the information in the data is factual and honest?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, to answer your question, no, I don't think that is wrong, because take away me, doing YouTube, that's the type of video I want to watch as a collector. I want to know that stuff. So there's going to be, I know that there's people out there, right, that want to know that information, and they go to YouTube to find that, because, for them, this is a good resource. They might not have the time to kind of dig into the numbers and stuff. And so they look to Journo or, whoever, to kind of break it down for them. And that's very, very helpful. So that particular part is how I feel about that. I mean, it's a tough question, and I don't know if it's unanswerable. I think that there's a particular sensitivity, I think, specifically to comic book collectors with this particular topic. And shout out to Neo Cards and Comics. If you guys know Neo, Journo, I know you know Neo, but he does he talks about comic books as well, but he talks a lot about the sports card market. And he says, as someone who kind of has 1 foot in, 1 foot out to both markets, he's like, the comic book collectors are way more sensitive to this whole spec selling the whole deal. Whereas in the sports card world, they're like, yeah, obviously people sell, and they talk about sports cards. So it's kind of an interesting thing that and I don't know where that comes from culturally within the comic book collecting hobby. I think maybe that just comes to the idea that, people don't like to see comics as being expensive and things like that. So there's that element. I know there's a lot to unpack here. I can only say what, for me, how I kind of look at it. I think as someone who does it, I think you just have to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable in a way and figuring out what might be sort of the best way to, put out that information out there. Because, I have a YouTube channel and I also sell comic books. I'm not really a comic vendor. I don't sell anywhere at the level that I think a lot of other people do. But yeah, I, have a little pocket money that I sell on things like eBay. And I've done claim sales on my YouTube and stuff like that. But I do, as the channel has grown, it has become more of a thing where I've noticed that when I do put out a video of here's 5 spec books that I think personally might be, go up in value, or here's some books to invest in, I now do see it having a little bit of an effect on eBay. I can see that, all of a sudden I talked about this thing and there were 15 sales that week, and I've seen it to where when I put out the video, Key Collector never says, Swagglehouse YouTube channel says it, but I know that I've been responsible for certain ones that have showed up on Trending 20 or Hot List or whatever. And it makes me feel uncomfortable personally. It actually does make me feel weird about it. So I've dialed back a little bit of that content, and I've tried to just figure out the balance of, this is just information that I think people want to know, and I'm just trying to share it with you guys, versus buy this book. Oh, this is the next big thing. And just that energy, I think is really the balance that I'm always looking to do. And then there's the other element too, where it's I don't know what's better. Should I be talking about books that I myself own, or should I be talking about books that I don't own? Because if I own it, then that I at least bought it. But then if I own it, maybe I'm trying to sell it. So, I don't really know what's the better way to do it. So I know I said a lot, but these are all the ideas that I think about a lot in my head. And I think it just comes down to, the individual person and the transparency that they have, right, and what kind of, delivery and energy they put out in doing it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being an influencer or having a platform and also selling comic books. I think it can be done in a very, transparent and positive way.
Right. No, I hear you. And it's funny too, because when I do my, top X-Men books to invest in or something like that, 25 under 25, and people in their comics are like, I just picked this up due to your suggestion. I'm like, I told you guys in the video, don't buy it just because I said so. So like you said, but hey, but you're right. It's like collectors are looking for people to give us this information so we could then, and I've said this a lot. I don't sit and make these videos on books that I have. I mean, books will come up, and sometimes when I'm going through it, okay, number 4 on the list. I was able to pick this one up 6 months ago, and I'll say that, or like, I don't have this one yet, but this one is, I don't know if I'll be able to get it because it's doing this. So I'm transparent there, but I'll say, okay, I know the X-Men are going to be coming in the MCU. Let me do a X-Men affordable keys. And then I do my list and I film my video. And you know what I'm doing for the ones that I don't have? I'm giving myself FOMO. Because now I'm doing the research myself, talking about it. Now I'm going on the market. So, but I hear you, man, because I get those comments. I've seen sales after I talk about books, and it's a little uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. And you made a great point. It's like people want this. And as long as we got to be conscious of how we want to operate, and conduct our business, and to buy and sell. Who are we talking about? Say names. We're not talking about anybody in particular. We're talking about the business of having a YouTube channel and being a face behind a screen and selling comic books at the same time. And especially as you get more and more success, and what that means. So, we're not, please, no, we're not sitting here like trying to insinuate, oh, we're talking about the same people that get pitchforks picked up to them. That's what I'm trying to end right here. It's just like, let's have a conversation to talk about how we all can be accountable, us in front of screens and you guys. So you guys need to be accountable by not, oh, we're talking about selling comic books and making YouTube videos, and so-and-so, that's so-and-so, like pitchfork,
Jared, if this Dazzler one doesn't go to the moon, I'm gonna blame you.
All right, I know, right? And then Nucking here, YouTube and social media is destroying the comic book world. I disagree, but I always do believe that technology, social media, YouTube, it could be our best friend or it could be our worst enemy, and it all depends on how we utilize it. And I know Swag just did a video recently kind of talking about the concerns. But what's going to ruin, and I want to kind of end on this note, and I want you both to have a say in this as a closeout. Everyone, first off, I want to reiterate that it's absolutely nuts how serious comic book collecting has become. And I don't mean serious I mean serious in terms of stressful and angry and aggressive and just toxic this comic book community industry hobby has become. And again, there's a lot of righteous concern there. Don't get me wrong. But we gotta find a way to calm this down. We do. Now, we are entering a new age of technology. I think, Swag, you talked about this too in your video the other day. The COVID has changed things for comic books. And again, it's kind of like what Nucking here is saying about the internet. It's like we are given tools. It depends on how we use them. So the COVID age of things, we can take these tools and we can propel comic books to a new horizon that we've never seen before, or we can keep making the same mistakes and be somewhere that we know too well. And I'm going to tell you guys, you know who's responsible for that outcome, either or? It's not me. It's not Bronze. It's not Swaggle. It's not Comic Tom or Skeff or whatnot or CGC or any of them. You know who it is? It's you guys. You guys are more powerful than all of us combined. You know that? And that's a fact. And now, and I'm going to explain myself by answering the question that I just asked Bronze and Swag about, is there a conflict of interest, or what is the deal with influencers or, selling comics and all this stuff? It boils down to honesty and transparency. as long as you are not feeding anyone lies. Now, let's go back to what I said at the beginning of the stream.
Here we go, this Dazzler book again.
This guy never stops talking about it, just pumping it up.
What did I say? I said I have substantial evidence of rumors that Dazzler's going to show up. This book is hot. Cop it while you can. And then I go into my whatnot sell and sell my 20, 30, 40 copies, right? Or I go place it on eBay. I lied to you. I lied to you all because I don't have no information. The only thing I know is my own assumptions. We know X-Men are coming. This is a nice little minor key that's been getting a little hotter on the market. I like the Dazzler character, and I do believe that when we start seeing mutants in the MCU, we're probably going to start seeing some that we didn't really see play a role in the Fox franchise films. So that might lead me to believe that there's room for Dazzler, and we know that Marvel Studios is willing to take risks with some of these characters like Dazzler. I mean, look at what they're doing with She-Hulk and all the role players that we've seen already on the She-Hulk show. I gave you false information, but I could give you that information correctly. And until somebody is putting a gun to your head, literally, you guys have more power and responsibility on where this comic book community and hobby and industry is going. Because at the end of the day, people on YouTube do what they do because of what you guys do. We make videos, most of us, because of what you guys click on or comment on or thumbs up. We sell the books that you want to buy because you buy them. Black Flag did what they did because there's a market for them. CGC wants to get in on saying that this is their own exclusive because there's a market for it, because people buy it, right? People make top 10 videos because you watch it. People sell huge or dollar bin books on Whatnot for $30 because you bid on it. Whatnot collaborates with CGC because you're right there watching it, entering those giveaways, and then hopping into Jim Lee's show moments after and bidding up the books. Now, I know some of you may not be the ones that are doing this, and some of you are. So all you can do as an individual, if you're sitting there saying, well, that ain't me, I don't watch those channels, I don't use Whatnot, then just keep doing you. And if your intent is to want to use Whatnot, but you just don't like what they're doing, then remember what I said. Don't go picking up a pitchfork and scaring them to where they run and close that door. And when the door's closed, then you turn around and point a finger at them and come back on your social media and influence your followers saying, you see, what are they hiding? You have to be productive as well. You guys have to be just as responsible and transparent as anybody sitting in front of a screen, anybody selling on Whatnot, or anybody running a business that grades books, publishes books, etc. And that is what I want to be the biggest takeaway, because I truly believe at the end of the day, there's some conflicts of interest here. There are. And we didn't get to a solution tonight. It wasn't meant to, but we didn't. But I think it's safe to say that the majority of the problem in this hobby is not conflict of interest because they're sitting there like, oh yeah, we're going to scheme this and scheme that. The problem is that, yes, this is a business and people need to make money, but they need to do it with more transparency. And the problem of why it's not getting solved is because we have a divide and conquer mentality. We're like the opposite ends of a magnets pushing against each other. They do something that's not transparent, and then you guys push back with the pitchforks, and the divide to solving something gets bigger and bigger and bigger instead of trying to close the gap. So with that being said, I want to give both of my guests an opportunity to have the floor. So you guys, I want you to really come in here, address whatever you feel needs to be addressed right now, going back to everything that we talked about for the show. Mickey, Swag, I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. It was always a good time. It's great to share the screen with Bronze for the first time. So really happy we got to do that. Let's do it again. And I think you summed it up well. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of new interesting developments going on in the hobby with Whatnot. I think Whatnot's going to be around for a long time. I think eBay is going to have their version of Whatnot soon. That's going to enter the game. That's going to take it to another level. And I want CGC and CBCS and EGS and all these companies, I want them to do well. And I think it really just comes down to, that element of transparency and just really, adding that to the conversation. And I think for CGC, they might just be kind of in their own island, like doing what they do and not realize they definitely don't realize when, Swagglehouse makes a video being upset about their label changes. I think it can go a long way as they continue to figure out new ways to monetize and expand their business, which I'm sure they're always thinking about. It could go, a long way just to start to add that, that voice, who's going to be the media person that's going to help get their messages across, help be their PR people, and do they have that person? I think that would really, really help them. You can't have, whose name I forget, the head grader seems to be like the face of their company.
Is that CGC Mike? Is that CGC
yeah,
Mike?
or no, you're right.
Or Matt Nelson.
Matt Nelson, right? But then
yeah.
You can't have like CGC Mike, the administrator guy, be like the voice. Like you got to have like people who kind of represent CGC and help with these PR announcements. And I think that'll help. And I think ultimately that'll be better for everybody. So that would be my thing that I would kind of encourage to put out there. And with the whole thing too, I very much subscribe to that idea of voting with your wallet. I think that is, definitely some words to live by. But there is this element too, where like, I want to also say to people out there, like, I understand, like my bad analogy is, we live in a system where you kind of have to have a car. So if you drive gas and you're adding to emissions, polluting the earth, like you can feel bad about it, but at the same time, like you are beholden to the whole world that, kind of requires you to drive a car. You can't help it. Maybe you can make little individual choices to, do what you can do as an individual. And same thing with CGC. It's like your protest of CGC, like I'm never going to buy another graded comic book again. That's totally fine. And you can do that. But like, I think if you're somebody out there who's a little bit struggling with like, where do I go with this? I think it's okay to also acknowledge that it's like, well, this is kind of the system. And yeah, CGC currently, they command the most money for their books. If you're a big time seller and you can't help but use CGC, I think that there's elements. And I think really having these kind of conversations and getting that transparency element is really going to be the main solution for all of this, all the problems that we're seeing. So that's my 2 cents to wrap it out.
Okay. Thank you, Swag. Bronze Age, we're gonna get you in 1 second. I do want to address this just because I really appreciate Tony. Thank you so much for the super chat. I just wanted to get to this before we close out. Curious, talking about conflict of interest. Do you guys believe if you work at a grading company, you should be able to submit your personal books to the company you work for? Great show, guys. Man, this is a whole nother show right there. But I mean, I think that I like that. I don't think you should be grading your own books for sure. But I would say, if as a collector, if I got hired at CGC or CBCS or even EGS, and then I'm sitting on this personal collection, and now I can't send my own books in, like that would suck, right?
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of system that allows for that to happen. I think it would be almost unreasonable. I mean, you would want comic book collectors, to be able to do it. Right.
True. Bronze, you have a kind of a quick answer to that?
Yeah. So it's definitely a pickle. No, Tony's asking the question, and I don't believe he's talking about his own company, but like for Tony, who is the only grader I would have a problem with that. I think that would cast some serious issues with that. Now you talk about, let's just say CGC. We talked about CGC today. Could be CBCS. Doesn't really matter. Other companies with multiple graders, multiple employees. Yeah, there's a bit of an issue there. But now it's funny how this ties back into something we talked about with CGC. At least I know the way that Matt Nelson's talked about it before. Those books, the grader theoretically never sees whose books they are. They're not seeing that on the submission. They're seeing the barcode. And unless they happen to know who that barcode, that number belongs to, theoretically, they shouldn't really know who that is. So that kind of eliminates some of that. That's kind of funny, though, because it does kind of do this thing where you're talking about these exclusives that they're grading. Well, now all of a sudden they do know who the customer is. And that just kind of reminded me about that. Like, that does kind of take away from some of that impartiality of like what they're looking at in the book they're looking at. Now, again, they're probably all 9/8. It doesn't really matter. But that's the way I look at it. It's probably... as long as there's a way to guarantee that you're not grading your own books,
right,
that should be fine. Now, it's weird, though, because if it just goes into the queue randomly and you happen to get your own book, I mean, it's on you to raise your hand and say, I can't grade this. I have a conflict of interest. Just like if you were a lawyer trying to defend like your brother's wife or something, you know?
There you go. There you go. All right. Good stuff, Tony. Great question. All right, Bronze, I'll let you now kind of, again, I mean, we fleshed out a lot today, so just closing thoughts and just kind of words of, encouragement of where do we go from here? So
100%. It just like Swagel said, it's important to point out that it's a real honor to be on this and to be talking to everybody in chat, to have everybody getting their opinions out there, because to me, that is absolutely the most important thing that's come from all the events we've experienced over the last couple of months in the comic hobby here. Yes, we're in a time of change. There's all this new technology coming, live stream selling platforms. There's going to be more and more changes. There's a lot of people in the community that want to move backwards and they want to go to that old nostalgia of just walking into a brick and mortar comic store and picking up books and reading them. And I love and respect that, but the world just doesn't work that way. We have to move forward. We have to take these new things as they come. And when that happens, my best advice to people is to, you can do things like vote with your wallet, but don't just say like, CGC, I'm never going to use you again. Go back to how to win friends and influence people, that old principle. Tell people what it's going to take for you to become their customer again.
There you go.
Talk to CGC, write on the forums, submit a letter to them, an email. We call them these days. Again, technology moves forward. Take these kind of opportunities to respectfully voice your opinion. People are going to ignore the hate for a lot. I mean, they won't ignore it completely. It's going to, come up on their radar, but defense mechanisms get shot up instantly. And it's screw that. That's not what we're about, or they don't understand. But if you explain like, hey, I was a loyal customer for CGC for 8 years. Because of recent events, I've stopped submitting books to you. And I'm just using CGC as an example. It could be anything we don't like in the hobby. But the other thing is, when you're out there, voting with your wallet's great. Taking that approach is awesome. I really recommend that. But also be critical of yourself. That's one thing that I talk about on my channel. I play devil's advocate a lot. I try to look at things from other perspectives. And I try to, more importantly than trying to say any opinion is right, wrong, or this is the way you should think, what I would say is you need to think. You need to critically analyze what's at stake here. Who has interest involved here? Are you okay with that? How are they communicating it? Are they communicating it appropriately in a way that you feel is respectful to deserve your money? And kind of take everything in that filter, because when you're out there in this community and you're beating the war drum of, I'm mad at so-and-so, I'm mad at this company, that's fine to voice your opinion. That's your right. But is it really going to get us anywhere? Try to be the change in the world that you want to see. That's that old cliche. But I think in this topic, it really comes back to the forefront.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah. So, I think what's great about this discussion tonight is it took us to this kind of foundation of how we can operate in this hobby just in general. Again, I think we really pulled away from this idea of conflict of interest, circled back more to this transparency issue, and then circle back on how we can perpetuate change ourselves on every level, and again, key things that are coming up here, speak with your wallets. Your purchasing power is very important. Support what you want to support. Don't jump to conclusions, and be a pitchfork, echo chamber of conspiracy theories. Ask the proper questions, have the conversations, and be able to see the other point of view as well. You got to understand, guys, even if you guys have good intent and you're out here, just pitchforking, whether it's individuals or companies, don't get mad or get surprised to when they close the door on you. We got to start by trying to have the communications. Remember the example I gave with Nelson. Just imagine if he was just blackballed because people didn't fully understand the situation. Nelson came out, was transparent, and talked. Maybe CGC even listened because they took that down. And maybe the next time a retailer and CGC come together on this, maybe there's some evolution there and some positive changes because we actually sat and critically thought, asked the questions, and had conversations about it. So I want to leave here today making sure that everyone comes out of this being able to work on those things. Again, whether you have a YouTube, whether you sell comics, or whether you're just here for the hobby and you're just in the chat or you have an IG, because we are all influencing each other at the end of the day. Our voice matters. The words that we speak, the words that we type, the pictures that we post on Instagram, all of it matters. And that's why we are a community. So let's continue to try to build it up for the better and do it in a productive way. Bronze Age Nerd, Swag Hoss. I really couldn't have had two other, perfect people to discuss. I could have had a lot more people on, but then it would have been a 5-hour long show. There's a lot of great people. I really hope to continue this conversation. I really hope everyone else continues this conversation. I really hope to have more people on my channel in the near future too, further discussing this. But I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight. Really, really awesome to have you guys. And again, sub them up. Their links are below. Bronze Age Nerd, Swag Hoss. Any last words, Swag?
By Dazzler 1.
There you go. At your own
I
discretion.
hear that Journo guy has a bunch of them.
Bronze.
I don't normally do this, but I actually do have something to promote. I am doing something. We're talking about being the change in the world we want to see. I am going, people are very critical of Whatnot. I'm a seller on Whatnot, but if you didn't know that, I'm a seller on Whatnot, and I'm going to continue to sell on Whatnot. I think there's a Swiss Army knife of tool sets out there. But in about 1 hour at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, I am going live on a newer selling platform called Drip, which is very similar. It's a live sales platform, but they're doing some things a little bit differently, like offering free shipping, up to $10 for your sale, lower fees. There's some differences there. They're listening to the community a little bit more. And so I'm going to help kind of support a new platform a little bit, see what it's all about, see if it's, kind of good for everybody. And what I really want from that is the people that do end up buying that auction, let me know your feedback about how it worked for you, what you think about the platform, what needs to improve. One thing I love about them, they do monthly Q&A roundtables, like Ask Me Anythings, with the leadership of the company amongst all the sellers. So there's that direct line of communication about what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, and also your concerns. So just something I'll point out, I'm doing that in about an hour, and it'd be cool to see anybody there.
Drip. Now I'm going to look into that. All right, guys. Again, thank you guys so much. Bronze Age Nerd, Swag Hoss, folks hanging out in the chat. Thank you guys so much for being here. Have a good weekend. I know it's a 3-day weekend. Be safe. Don't drink and drive. If you're in my area, hit me up. I don't drink. I swear to God, I will come pick you up. Be well, guys. Until next time.